had to get a piece of wood just so the camera could actually point in the right spot. I look like Minecraft Steve. That's just great. I have no idea why I started recording. I think I was going to talk about my ViBE. I was going to talk about ViBE a little bit. ViBE was interesting. I started out with a tutorial. I knew immediately what I wanted to do. I wanted to remake, or I can't really remake a game that was never released, but I said it was a spiritual successor to Mega Man X++, because I like the idea of the game. It's Mario Maker, but for Mega Man. You can make your own Mega Man X levels, and Mega Man Maker existed, and that's actually a pretty fun game. I like it. It's great. But there isn't any Mega Man X content, and honestly, I prefer X over Classic. It's simple. So I decided I'll make it myself, because I am kind of narcissistic, and I thought I could do it, and I guess I was right. I started watching a video by CodeMonkey on grids, and that was a pain to follow. It's pretty bog standard for me though. And then, yeah, once I got the grid set up, everything else I made, actually I edited most of the art myself. A lot of the art didn't come flat out from me. It's just an edit from either someone else or the original game. But other than that, I mean, I coded everything besides the grid. I did code the tile rules. The tile rules are pretty simple. Say you have that. It's a block of 4 tiles. That'll be a little bit more clear. And you want to have tiles that denote the edge of the tile, so you know it's not a cutoff straight from tile to background. So a tile rule would basically say this top right tile would all of a sudden, or top left, I don't know, my camera already flipped, that tile would all of a sudden become a corner tile. And then so on and so forth. You go through the list until the entire thing is satisfied. And now all these tiles are corner tiles. I'll probably have a visual graphic for that because my drawings were terrible. And say you add another tile to it. Well, now all of a sudden you just have this really bad looking blob on the side. So you'd have to change this tile so that it actually reflects that there's a tile there. And now it looks a lot nicer because it's the right tile. I didn't really run into many issues with that. I think later on in the project I added slopes kind of haphazardly, and I had issues where they would just all of a sudden turn into the not slope variations because of my really bad code. But yeah, it's very interesting. Another issue I had was collision. That was a week or so of work. This was back when I was still going to school. I'm graduated from high school now, thankfully. So the main issue is I can't just take the mesh, which is not 3D. It just has a point for the corners of the square. There isn't anything depth-wise, and unfortunately, collision colliders kind of want depth, or at least I think they want a closed mesh. That, I mean, it would help. It would certainly help. So instead, I created a prefab that is just a 1x1 block of box 2D collision, and I spawned it wherever a tile was, and you could imagine, even a simple level, you'd have hundreds of those boxes, and that's a lot of stuff Unity has to keep track of. I'm using Unity, by the way. It was a pain. And then I decided to add greedy meshing because I remembered from a Minecraft remake video, one of those, someone brought up greedy meshing and they added it to their game. It's basically, instead of having a bunch of meshes like this, you know, there's 4 meshes by each other, instead it would turn itself into one large mesh, like that one on the bottom there. And that worked pretty well. At some point I was going to add the vertical version of it, but gameplay wasn't hurt by it too much and I had lag elsewhere, so yeah. Oh yeah, the lag. The lag is a pain. The main tool I use, I call the default tool, and the reason why it's called the default tool instead of something like paint is because there is a separate paint tool. It's separate because it causes lag. Every time that you place a tile down, it takes just a fraction of a second, more than a single frame though, so it lags just a bit. So it's very lovely when you repeatedly place tiles and it causes repeated lag. The system just does not like that. So I decided, instead of having a paint tool where you can click and drag and it'll place blocks everywhere, I'll have a default tool where you click, it'll place the tile, and then it'll wait for you to unclick before it can place another tile. It's simple, solved my problem, worked as well as I wanted it to. Of course, I added the paint tool in case you're fine with the lag, and I'll merge it once I figure out how to make it not terrible. But yeah, the big issue with the lag was rectangle tools, because the rectangle tool places all the tiles one by one, and then I think I made it not update. I'm pretty sure I made it not update per tile, but only once it's done placing every tile. But it's a lot of added tiles, and it has to update everything, so it's kind of slow, and I think tile rules actually still apply. So that's a pain, I can tell you that much. I ended up adding async pretty recently after I put the code on GitHub. It's not actually on the GitHub repo right now. Yeah, async was an interesting little dabble. For whatever reason, it crashes the build, or at least I have the build version 12.5. It will crash if it runs an async operation. So I had to change it. I had to add a library, which I didn't even know exist, and then I had to do a different kind of call. And I also had to change the function. I had to add the async operation between the public and the void, so that would actually asynchronously update. I mean, it worked well. I could tell you you get a single extra frame out of the 20 you lose, but I mean, it works. They made a dent. I had an idea, instead of rendering the mesh during editing, it would just have a bunch of 1x1 visual tiles. I'm a little worried that would cause a lot of performance loss, but the great thing is Unity has a system called DOTS, data-oriented something. Basically, the data and the functionality are separate, which is great because it means that I can just use the data part and a little bit of the functionality part for rendering the tiles. And then, of course, when you go back into gameplay, they would all be deleted, and you would see the mesh, which would be way faster during gameplay, because instead of having a bunch of tiny meshes, you have a bunch of bigger meshes. Or a handful of bigger meshes. Yeah. The player control, that was... So I ripped it from another project of mine. I called it Mega Man X/2. I was gonna call it Over 2, but X Over exists. It's a really bad mobile game, but the designs in it everyone loves. So I changed the name to /2, and then I never got past a very... It wasn't a bad stage, but I made a stage revolving around the Turbo Man tilesets for Mega Man 7. Yeah, I just ripped the controller from there, and I had a couple issues. Always had issues with the wall jumping. Wall jumping is a nightmare to program. I still didn't really fix it, especially because there's an issue where if you're in a 1x1, or not a 1x1, one wide area, if you wall jump, you'll just go through the wall, which is not great, because then you'll zip up to the top, and if you're not supposed to be in the wall, you might go out of bounds. I fixed that by not letting you wall jump in a 1x1 area. I had it in my head that I wanted a lot of this to be very modular. The tile rule system was not modular. I really should fix that. I think there's some easy ways to implement it, but yeah. The big thing that I added for the player system was skins. So you could have Mega Man X, or I had Zero in there. I was gonna make a Blast Hornet one because I decided, hey, let's theme it around Blast Hornet, because that is my favorite Maverick from the Super Nintendo trilogy. And Gyroman. Gyroman's my favorite robot master. I just like the idea. This is little propellers on his back, little things on his feet. Yeah. I also modularized the weapon system and finally fixed an issue with the rendering of the special weapon color change in /2. So the way it worked in /2 was you had your base Mega Man X and you put it in the shader, and then it got this palette file. It's just a really long string, or not a string, a really long thing of colors. And then it would go over here, it would check over every red value, and it would go, okay, so the red value is the same as this pixel here, and this pixel here has a color, so I'm going to add this color on top of the original image at this spot. This process does not look very good because it adds a very slight bit of translucency to the added pixels. You would always have a little bit of that original blue on the bottom bleeding through, and I changed the sprite at one point to be just gray. That didn't really look that good, so I wasn't sure what to do, and then I found out in shader graphs, Unity's built-in, or not built-in, but Unity's add-on, shader graphs, has a feature that basically lets you pick a color and then say, okay, replace it with what color, and then you can input that color, and I added it, and the way that I added it was it goes through all 6 colors for the base Mega Man X sprite that I have. It's not the same as the regular Super Nintendo sprite. It's just slight tweaks to the colors. And then it'll replace it with only 2 different colors, one for the over armor and one for the under armor. And then it'll tone the color down as you go down to the deeper shades. My phone's being weird. But yeah, it's that way you only need to supply one color for the over armor, one color for the under armor. Looks alright. And then of course you have to supply 3 different projectiles. You have to supply the base projectile for the special weapon. So if you just press the shoot button and let go immediately, what projectile should come out. And then you need to supply the charged version of that projectile. So if you hold it and you get up to the 3rd stage of charging, when you release the button, you should be able to shoot out projectile. There is something flying around and I don't like it. Oh, it's going on. I don't like bugs. Anyways. So yeah, you need to supply those 2. And I also have a 3rd option for the lemons because you want to be able to shoot the mid-charge projectile. I left that in as a basic feature because the actual base player shooting lemons is also technically a special weapon in the code. It's just a special weapon that gives you the default colors. But yeah, that's ViBE. The variable intricate blast engine. It was certainly a journey. Had a lot of people help with it though. Links a lot if you were helping the project through. Know a lot of my teachers in high school helped with it. Knew a lot of people in the X++ Discord. Tried. A couple of them actually helped. A couple of them were just making me laugh. Especially you, Kenny. You're a very enjoyable person to talk to. Well, it's the middle of summer, and it's very hard to maintain structure. It's my issue right now. Enough about my issues. Time to turn off this camera before the summer heat cooks my phone.